Good afternoon. Welcome to Title Sports Network. My name is Seb Parkinson, and I'm aptly placed in a former church, the House of Christ. We're here with Dan Rafael to react to the news that Ryan Garcia's B-sample has come back, and it's not good news, Dan. What are the results?
Well, it's not good news if you're Ryan Garcia, and frankly, Seb, it's as expected. This is probably the least surprising thing. It's less surprising than the sun rising in the morning. I mean, he had his B-sample tested at his request after his A-sample, his two A-samples for the two failed tests came back. The one from right before he fought Devin Haney on April 20th, the one that was his post-fight test on the night of the fight that came back positive for the performance-enhancing drug Ostarine. And like any athlete that has a positive test, he, at least in terms of VADA, which is the agency that they hired to conduct this testing, he asked for the B-sample to be tested, which is his right. So he had a representative there when the sample was opened up on Wednesday to observe, to make sure there was no funny business. And it actually came back, the result, a little bit quicker. A lot of folks I spoke to thought, because of the Memorial Day holiday weekend in the United States, with the weekend coming up, and then here in America, most things are closed for business on Mondays, that we really wouldn't get that result back until the early part of next week. But they turned it around in about 24 hours. And a lot of people, Seb, ask, well, why did it take so long for the original test to take a couple of weeks, but this only took one day? And the reason is because when they were testing the original samples that came back prior to the fight and right after the fight, they were testing for literally hundreds of substances that are on the WADA ban list. For this particular one, because his tests were positive for Ostarine, they only had a test for literally one thing. They only tested these two B samples for Ostarine, and they came back positive, as expected. And so now he is going to go forward with the New York State Athletic Commission, which in the next, it's their time frame to figure it out. But my experience tells me that sometime within the next, certainly sometime this summer, they will have a hearing, and Ryan Garcia and his team will have the opportunity to go and make their case.
Yeah, we spoke to Eddie Hearn this afternoon. I've been at the Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall press conference, and Eddie Hearn was very vociferous by saying he really hopes he's innocent. He really hopes Ryan Garcia's results come back as innocent. Dan, what does this mean for Ryan Garcia? What are the repercussions of this? If it's the allegations are true that he has failed these drug tests.
Well, there's no question he did fail the drug test. I mean, I have the documents from the laboratory, so the test failures are fact. Now, what's up for debate, I suppose, is why did he fail the test? Was it contamination? Did somebody give it to him and he didn't know it? Spike a drink, spike this, whatever. That's for the commission and all to determine. But there is no debating that in 4 different VADA tests on 2 different samples, A's and B's, all 4 were positive for this banned substance, which has been on the WADA ban list for many years, and you're just simply not allowed to take it. And so therefore, the commission will have the hearing, and he'll get, like I said, he'll have the chance to make his case. But if the New York Commission follows what it normally would do, which is the concept of strict liability, which is what's followed in the state of Nevada, which is obviously very heavy boxing, followed in California, done tons of boxing out there. And this is a concept that I think a lot of people don't quite get. It's not that he can make any explanation that he wants about why a substance was in his system, but under the rules and regs of these various commissions, that's fine, but it's not about how it got there. It's just that it is there, that you are the captain of your ship. However it entered your system, you as the athlete are responsible. And so there will most likely be a penalty to be paid. So again, he'll have his opportunity to explain himself, and certainly whatever is said in that hearing, the commission can certainly take that into consideration when doling out whatever the punishment's going to be. But again, my experience is that he'll probably take a suspension. How long, that's to be determined. Again, that could have to do with the way that he explains it. Could be 6 months, could be a year, could be a little bit longer. But that's for down the road. So he is facing a very likely suspension of some kind. Now, the result of the fight, he obviously defeated Devin Haney by a majority decision. Now, in most cases, these types of situations, when they find you to have failed a drug test, the result of the fight is overturned and becomes a no contest on your record. So the win is erased, the loss is erased, and it just becomes a no contest. The New York State Athletic Commission, as some other commissions, have it within their statutes that they can also change it if they decide to a disqualification loss, which would mean that Ryan Garcia would take a loss on his record, and the result would become a victory on Devin Haney's record. Most of the time, it becomes a no contest. In this particular case, and this was something I reported about several days ago, that the Devin Haney team had sent a letter to the New York Commission. This is even before, obviously, the test result came back for the B-sample, saying that for these reasons, this rises above just make it into a no contest. We want you to make it into a disqualification loss. And they cited, besides, obviously, 2 failed drug tests, they cited the fact that Ryan Garcia failed to make weight by over 3 pounds and later said he did it on purpose. So that to them was sort of a mitigating factor, if you will, to make it worse than just missing the weight. And so for those reasons, they wanted to be changed to a disqualification loss, which, again, based on my experience, is entirely possible. I'll give you an example. Back a few years ago, there was a super middleweight fight that took place in Washington, D.C., near where I live, between Luchin Bute and Badu Jack. It was a WBC super middleweight title fight. The official result of the fight was a draw. But because Luchin Bute failed a post-fight drug test, which, by the way, was also for Ostarine, coincidentally, the Washington, D.C. Commission changed that draw to a disqualification loss for Luchin Bute. So that is not without precedent. And that was something that the Devin Haney's team's letter to the commission cited when they were making their case. So this is far from done. What's not in doubt, though, is that Ryan Garcia failed 2 A-sample drug tests, and that both B-sample drug tests came back positive on Thursday morning.
Yeah, we know that Ryan Garcia was in Saudi Arabia last week, sort of doing a bit of a world tour, really. He claims to be in Brazil now. I've seen some tweets of his. I just want to go back to a tweet from May the 11th. It says, Eddie Hearn, Victor Conte, Dan Rafael, none of them can take my victory away from me. I have God with me. You have no chance. You guys are hypocrites. Victor Conte was banned from baseball for cheating. Eddie Hearn had a fighter test positive and fights for his innocence. Dan Rafael just decided to turn on me just because when he was my biggest supporter at one point, these fake people should be out of boxing. What do you think is going through Ryan Garcia's head now that these results have been made public?
I can't tell you what's going on in Ryan Garcia's mind, but I can respond to the criticism that he has of me. Now, look, for many, many years, I've had a friendly, close relationship with Ryan Garcia. I've known the kid since he was a teenager. I met him when he was just 3-4 fights into his professional career. I have done numerous stories about him. I've interviewed him extensively about his boxing career, about his mental health issues. We've had, when you cover boxing for as long as I do, you get to know a lot of fighters, you get to know their families. And I don't necessarily become friends with fighters. That's not really appropriate. But there are certain fighters that you have a little bit of a different relationship with that does border on personal. That's just to be expected as a human being. Ryan Garcia was one of those people that I did have that kind of relationship with, where we would text each other. We would talk occasionally. One time I was in Vegas not that long ago covering a fight. He's like, come on out. I'm going to go out of town. Come out with us. I politely declined. I'm old enough to be his father. But the point is, we've had a good relationship, but that doesn't change. My first and foremost job was to report the factual information to the boxing public, which is my role as a journalist. So when I reported his drug test failure, it wasn't as a personal thing. That was the way it was. Had Devin Haney failed the drug test, who I also have a friendly relationship, I would have reported the same thing. As I made the joke, not really that joking, was kind of serious. If my mother failed the drug test and I had the results, I'd probably report on my mother also failing the drug test. So it's not personal. And Ryan Garcia knows that. He should be more aware of what the role of the media is. And so that's the way I looked at it. So, he can take his shots at Victor Conte. He could take his shots at Eddie Hearn. He could take his shots at me. But I can tell you it's not personal. It's factual. I would never put something out like that if I didn't have documentation or sources that were 100%. Not only do I have sources that are 100%, I actually have the documentation from all 4 of his failed tests. I may actually post those later. But the point is, Ryan's going through some stuff right now, and I don't dislike him. I kind of feel bad for him is the bottom line.
Yeah, well, Dan, great to catch up with you. Thank you for revealing this information. Thanks for joining me on the call. Have you any message to any supporters watching, anybody who thinks Ryan Garcia is still innocent?
Well, I mean, all I can do is report the factual information. I mean, there's a lot of things that are far more serious that people perhaps decline to look at the factual information and want to see things their own way. I just know this, and I've got 25 years of experience covering professional boxing. I've written, certainly hundreds of drug testing related stories. And the thing that is kind of perplexes me, Seb, on this particular case is is about as cookie cutter as you can get. Athlete has a fight. Athlete has a positive test. Athlete asks for the B sample to be tested. It is also positive. Athlete will go through the process, which was going to come up in the not too distant future of a hearing before the regulating commission. Athlete most likely will take a suspension. Athlete most likely will have the result of the test, of the fight changed. This, unfortunately, is as basic a case as possible. There's nothing extraordinary about this, other than the fact that maybe Ryan Garcia is a little more famous than some of the other fighters that I've reported about, including somebody far more famous than Ryan Garcia and Canelo Alvarez as one example. So, people can believe what they want, but I deal with facts.
How do you think this would affect Devin Haney's camp now? They've obviously had that 8-page letter that went through to the commission. They obviously want the fight to be overturned, is my understanding. With this result now, is that like a suggestion that he could get a win on his record for that? Is that likely?
Well, I mean, the commission's going to have the right to do that. They'll probably take into account the letter that the Team Haney sent them. Take a look at it. Again, we can't really say for sure until the commission has the opportunity to sit with Ryan Garcia and his team, in the hearing that will presumably be scheduled at some point this summer, and only at that point will we have any idea. So right now, the story's not over, but there's nothing, at least in my mind, that's going to happen until we find out when the commission will schedule the hearing. But you can, I guess, if you're on Team Haney, you can understand why they would want that change. They feel like they were done wrong. They feel like they have an athlete in terms of Ryan Garcia that cheated, not only in terms of having banned substances in his system for the fight, but also not so much about the weight that he was overweight, because they did agree to it when they got a penalty financially to go through with the bout, but the comments after the fact that he was that he did it on purpose. And I forgot to mention one other thing in that letter. Not only did they cite the failed drug tests and the fact that Garcia said publicly that he did it on purpose by missing the weight, he also was accused of using an IV bag in terms of rehydration, which is totally illegal, which was on video on a DAZN documentary that they did building up to the fight. And the reason why using an IV is illegal is because when you put all those fluids into your body, it can dilute whatever banned substance that you're using. So it dilutes the urine. So if you provide a urine sample, it's going to have lesser amounts than would potentially be there because you are, using the fluid. So it is used in IV bag as a masking agent. So they've got three things against them. They got the overweight on purpose, the illegal IV bag usage, and on top of that, the fact that there's the failed, the banned substances in the system. So they have a case, in my opinion.
Well, Dan, it's great to catch up with you, and hopefully we'll have more on this as the story unfolds, as it develops, as Ryan responds to it. Lastly, before I go, in terms of a suspension, what is the sort of maximum suspension you think he could get if the commission decide to enact it?
I mean, usually in these cases, the maximum suspension I can think about is usually as long as your boxing license is good for, which is a year. Now, there have been times where commissions have revoked a license, which makes it more complicated to get your license back. I'll use the example. It wasn't a drug testing case, but it was the same concept of strict liability. If you remember, this goes back a number of years ago when Antonio Margarito was found to have used illegal hand wraps in his fight with Sugar Shane Mosley. His license was revoked by the California Commission, and he ended up sitting out for 18 months. Now, what he could have done was try to box outside the United States. He could have possibly, with no issue, gotten a license to box in Mexico. But Margarito and his team knew that if they did that, if they wanted to come back and box the United States where the real money was, that the commissions that would go to license him would look very unkindly on the fact that he went around and tried to get the license. So he did not, and he ended up sitting out for 18 months. So I'm not saying Ryan Garcia, if everything goes against him, is going to be out for 18 months. But I would say you're looking at probably, a year. It could be shorter. Whatever it is, it'll be backdated until to the day of the fight. So it would most likely be backdated until April 20th. And so that's what he's looking at. But it's too early to say what the exact punishment is going to be because we haven't seen him get his day in court, which he's entitled to.
Well, Dan, thanks very much for joining me. We'll be back as this story unfolds throughout the week. Keep it locked to Title Sports Network. We'll be covering the Josh Taylor-Jack Catterall fight week, as well as the 5v5 in Saudi next week. And then we're off to Vegas, Dan, where me and you will be teaming up in a couple of weeks' time. So thanks for joining me, and catch up with you soon.
You bet. I look forward to seeing you in Vegas.